WNST one evacuating our state for Ohio. Northern Ohio and Cleveland. The Orioles have 3 there. And then, of course, the Ravens are headed to southern Ohio or northern Kentucky for some down there in the Covington area. This guy covers all the area out in Cincinnati. He's seen many, many things in Cincinnati, Ohio, over 38 years. He has not seen a parade around the franchise of Paul and Mike Brown, and he is waiting for that. John Popovich joins us from WCPO, the legendary Popo of Cincinnati. He's Popo_WCPO Sports out on Twitter and, of course, at WCPO.com. Popo, new season and, similar challenges for both these teams, right? I mean, both of these teams are sort of in their minds chasing the Steelers right now in the division, and both of these teams have had kind of tumultuous off seasons, and I know the Bengals aren't even lacing up their best players this Sunday.
Well, they're losing a couple. They have, especially a couple defensive players we're going to see because, Adam Jones isn't going to be out there. Vontaze Burfict isn't going to be out there. John Ross, their number 1 pick, isn't going to be out there. So, yeah, I was thinking about this last night that there's a lot of similarities about these teams because there's so many question marks about them. I think they've been so much more stable in the last other years, but the Ravens and the Bengals have made some changes, and I think they're both younger, and the Bengals especially have gotten younger and faster.
Well, and that's not such a bad thing. I mean, I would always look at the Bengals the last 2 or 3 years, and not just that Marvin's been there from the beginning, and it feels like Dalton was Carson Palmer. Like, it feels like there was never, I mean, they sort of run things similarly. Defensively, they always sort of tangle Flacco up and tangle our offense up and stop our running game, but it's the same names. It's Atkins, it's Johnson, it's Dunlop, I mean, Kirkpatrick, all these names we know, but the Zeitler and the Whitworth loss on the offense, that certainly will stop you a little bit and say, all right, now how are they going to run the ball? Who are they going to run the ball with? How are they going to protect Dalton? And, the Ravens have managed to get in and get some strip sacks on him and move him around the pocket a little bit as well. He has not had as much success, but the A.J. Green has always been a differentiator, but you can't do that if you can't protect the quarterback. And I am interested to see how the Bengals offense is going to match up against the Ravens defense because the Ravens defense believes you can't run on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you what. The offensive line had problems last year before they even lost Whitworth and Zeitler. Dalton got sacked 44 times last year. And so Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher are going to be at the ends as far as at the tackles this year. And it's, I think we're all wondering, these guys were highly drafted in order to move into those positions. I'm not sure they've been given the chance. Ogbuehi is over there on the left side where he was more comfortable in college. He didn't play well at right tackle. So Fisher is at the right side, and like I said, the offensive line wasn't that effective last year. And so I think a lot of people are wondering, okay, can it be better? Can it move the ball? Maybe they weren't the big problem. Maybe Jeremy Hill had lost a step. Everybody's interested in seeing whether Joe Mixon gives them a little more of a burst. Giovanni Bernard has come back very well from reconstructive knee surgery, and he seems like he's back to his old self. So I think there's a lot of questions. There's so many that I don't think we know anything until Sunday.
Marvin, obviously one of my favorites, and, my affection for him is well worn here over 2 decades of a relationship with him. And, every offseason, this is going to be the year, this will be the last year. That's fan talk to me. I don't know that the Brown family has ever shut the door there and said, well, let's get rid of Marvin and let's go find someone else to do this. I don't think they've really thought nearly as much about it as maybe you've been talked to about it on the street or certainly on a national level, and especially after the Pittsburgh loss a couple years ago. That on Twitter that night, that was Marvin's fault, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Nestor, that talk has been stronger in this offseason than it's ever been, mainly because he doesn't have a contract beyond this season. It's 15 years for him. I think a lot of people think win or lose, this could be his last season. But I don't hear that from Marvin. I don't get any of the impression that he's working less, doing anything less. I think that there's a lot of people still think that now the window is still open, maybe barely, for this team and some of the top players in order to do something, and also for Marvin be able to actually win a playoff game, go a little bit into the playoffs. You're right. And also, I think Mike Brown appreciates what Marvin has done long-term for this franchise. He's given it, after his term in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, he's given it a level of professionalism this franchise didn't have in the past.
Well, you know what? We have that around here, Papo. I mean, we have the Orioles here, who were dregs and still have a dreg as an owner, quite frankly. He's not a good, he's an awful owner, and has been an awful community guy here as well. But in the case of Buck Showalter and Dan Duquette, I said it sort of deodorized things. And, the Bengals had that going on, like they weren't going to be able to hire a coach back then. And I know some of Marvin's friends, he almost took the Tampa job. There were other jobs out there. There was a thought, well, hang on, wait for something better than Cincinnati to come along. And it really was a bad place. I mean, you were around it, and that perception's all gone now. That if Marvin left today, tomorrow, next week, Cincinnati would be a very good job to take, I think, at this point, if you can get along with the owners who are quirky, as they all are at this point. I mean, I'm not going to give Bob Kraft a hall pass as being an easy guy to get along with. They've just won up there because he's had the right coach and the right relationship.
Well, and I think that what it shows is the players want to be here for the most part right now. Back when Marvin first came, it was clear guys wanted to serve out the term of their contract and get out of town, and they weren't even entertaining the thought of sticking around. Marvin improved so many things, and it's just not Marvin. It had a lot to do with a changing of the guard, too. Mike Brown he may be the guy at the top, but his daughter, Katie Blackburn, and her husband, Troy Blackburn, do a lot of the work now, do a lot of the contract work. And I think they work in conjunction with Marvin Lewis to identify the players they want to be long-term in this franchise. So there's a lot of things that have changed, and I think the biggest thing is some guys have even come back, like a Michael Johnson, over a period of time. But most of the players, if they have the chance to sign a long-term deal, they stick around here. It's not like the old days of Takeo Spikes. He'd rather go to Buffalo than play in Cincinnati.
Or Corey Dillon, or any number of guys that came through there. I mean, Carson Palmer wanted to get the hell out of there, right? Literally.
Oh, in the worst way. And I'll tell you what, he really messed them up when all of a sudden he decided he didn't want to play in Cincinnati any longer. They were awfully lucky they were able to get Andy Dalton in the second round this year and develop him as quickly as they did. Palmer left them in a mess.
We are on the line with John Popovich. He is the legendary Popo, 38 years in Cincinnati on television, WCPO. You can follow him there or on Twitter at Popo_WCPO Sports. The perfect thing, and his legacy there, and he hasn't won a playoff game either. He's made a lot of money. He's a guy they're counting on. And obviously Marvin has gone to great, great lengths to try to sanitize him and keep him on the franchise and keep him on the straight and narrow and make him a better guy and make him a better football player. Where is all of that right now? Because I know the one thing, he's not going to play this week, and he's been entangled now with Goodell and the league and the franchise again. It's not a good look any way around, and certainly in a lot of places, I'm sure in Cincinnati, he's not popular as their best player, which he probably is, right?
He is their best defensive player, no question. I think we look at him a lot when you look at Luke Kuechly, who is a local guy here who has done great things in Carolina and that stuff. But he has that same sense in being able to, have great sense for where the play is going and how to lead the defense. The problem is the behavior. The fact that he was able to get his suspension cut down from the 6 games to the 3 games is helpful. But it's obviously the NFL doesn't want to listen to this guy getting in trouble, and it's not there's nothing off the field. It's all on the field as far as the hits, the timely hits, the dirty hits, whatever. But the franchise really did stay behind him this time. They felt they looked at that tape and there was no way it wasn't even penalized on the field. So Marvin stood behind him, and I think that's another one of those things that means a lot to these players here. Burfict is a popular player in the locker room, and as far as that goes, the fact that the coaching staff and the administration stood up for him and went after that appeal with him, I think meant a lot. He's not going to be there, so that's good for the Ravens. Adam Jones isn't going to be there. That's good for the Ravens, too. They'll be back soon, and let's see whether they could get through this stretch with them, because this is a different defense. Domata Peko is gone. Marcus Hunt is gone. Ray Mamaluga is gone. This is a younger group, and we'll have to see if they're able to come along quickly.
John, with A.J. Green, he's been the difference maker in this series. When you think about the guy that's killed the Ravens the most often, and the ball going over the Ravens' head late in the game, and the Ravens have gone to great lengths because of him, because of Antonio Brown, because of the wide receivers that they've seen that they've been beaten by. Last year, it was Odell Beckham, and it was the Dallas Cowboys and Des White as well. For A.J. Green, he's getting a little older as well, and I think the protection for his quarterback is going to be paramount for him. But, he's still a premier guy, and he's a guy that on Sunday is going to do something to beat the Ravens up a little bit, and whether they can recover or not, he's going to be a big part of the game plan.
Yeah, and it's hard to see whether he has slowed up. I think the key every year with A.J. Green is what kind of help he has. Because we've seen when the Bengals have failed in the playoffs or failed in the season, it's because Andy Dalton is going to A.J. Green almost exclusively, and you know as well as I do, that doesn't work. When Marvin Jones and Mo Sanu left here and went to other places, that really hurt the Bengals last season. They just didn't have the options they once had. Tyler Boyd has a second year under him right now. They're hoping John Ross helps. Tyler Eifert is healthy, at least to start the season. We'll see if he stays healthy. They need the more weapons in order for Andy Dalton to use, and Green is the guy that benefits from that because he gets more one-on-one coverage. That's the key. They have a couple of guys they've drafted, and I think they're hoping that at least they have more opportunities to go other places. Joe Mixon is also in the mix this year.
Well, I was going to ask you about him because, there's no doubt he's a football player, and there's no doubt he's going to get the ball and probably be the bell cow there before it's all over with. But, that was something the Ravens just couldn't do. The Ravens were not going to draft a kid that punched his girlfriend on a videotape. And Marvin and the organization there, and I remember the who they going to rest next era of Bengals football. But Joe Mixon, that would not have been palatable around here, Papo.
Yeah, and there's times it probably would have been palatable around here, but it seems like the Bengals have been punched enough around over the years, and they feel they have a strong enough locker room to do that. There were times that wouldn't have been the case. If you go back to some of the years in the past, when Odell Thurman came in, and then they had a few other guys that just seemed to be the Bengals were on the police blotter each and every week. That hasn't happened recently. It hasn't happened much at all. In fact, a lot less than around the rest of the NFL. I think they feel like they did their homework. Mixon, everybody kind of has admitted that what he did was terrible, that he served his time, that he was eligible to come into the NFL. Somebody was going to take him, and the Bengals feel comfortable enough that that they're not going to be abandoned by the public, and this guy's going to have to show up. He's going to have to be a good citizen of Cincinnati, and if he's a good player, that's going to work out too, because the Bengals needed somebody like him. Not only he seems to have a little more pop, and he's be able to see the blocks develop and get through a little quicker than Jeremy Hill. He's listed as third on the depth chart, but Nestor, I think you're going to see him at the top pretty soon.
Papa, what the hell are the Browns doing giving Joe Hayden to the Steelers like that? Making it harder on all of us, right?
Yeah, but you keep reading these things out of Cleveland saying they seem to be less enchanted with him all the time as far as he was able to do that he couldn't cover. I was interested in looking at the videotape when the network sent down, here's some Joe Hayden file, and he was chasing everybody. He wasn't making plays, wasn't making interceptions like he had in the past.
Some of us may say it was the helmet he was wearing, right?
Maybe that. Maybe it's contagious. You never know. But I think that the Steelers, they're pretty smart, and they usually won't follow up somebody just to pick up a name. They feel he could still play.
Man, your enthusiasm is always contagious. What's a guy like you doing up on a lawn in Riverbend there for John Mayer? I've only been to Riverbend one time. I saw Pearl Jam there about 20 years ago now. But, man, you're out there with John Mayer, all those screaming girls out there. How was the show?
Well, I'll tell you what, if I was about 20, I would have really enjoyed that even more because you're right about the girls. They were about 4-1. But my wife and I both enjoy them. It was a fun time, and it was a mixed crowd. And, and it was a huge crowd. And I'll tell you what, he's a good entertainer.
Well, nothing like a night on the lawn.
The only thing is, we bought lawn seats, Nestor, and I didn't know lawn seats mean that you stand up for 2 hours. Because once they started, I thought, okay, they're going to sit down, get down on the blanket, enjoy this. No, we stood for 2 hours.
Well, then you stood and enjoyed it. Come on, don't act like an old guy. Just because you've been doing this 38 years. I know you're young at heart and young in spirit. Hey, I'm looking forward to eating some chili with you on Sunday out there in Cincinnati. We're coming in to the Queen City. It's kind of weird, man. We usually play you guys like when the fireworks are going off on December 31st. I've seen the Cincinnati fireworks in Fountain Square more than I've seen the Baltimore fireworks, but this is quite a way to kick the season off, and we'll be sitting around in the press box watching the Steelers kick the snot out of the Browns again, right?
Well, this is a big time in Cincinnati too, because this is the start of the 50th season for the Bengals. So they usually do start on the road, and they usually start in Baltimore. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. The first couple of weeks they're at home here against the Ravens, then the Texans, and they're starting to bring back a lot of their old players from the 50 years of the franchise. So it's something pretty exciting for football fans around here.
No, save me some chili. I always look forward to the indigestion, and it's even worse if we lose, which is certainly possible. Hey, it's a box of chocolates, a football game. It's for real. No more fake football, John. So
that's exactly right.
We'll see you on Sunday down there in Cincinnati. Thanks for the time, as always. Always a pleasure to have you on, pal.
Thanks, Nestor.
You got it. He is the legendary Popo of Cincinnati, John Popovich, WCPO. You can follow him out on Twitter at Popo_WCPO Sports and WCPO.com. Man, I thought this is my 26th year now doing radio. He's 38 at the station, so good for him. Always a great visit, always a great guest, and I didn't even give him any trouble about Pete Rose or anything like that. You can find me out in the BuyItToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox digitally. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness at PlanetFitness.com, where it's always $10 a month. And, of course, our best feature is our WNST breaking news service on your text. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Almost 10,000 of you subscribe to that, and you always get it first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford. Of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for the weekend, as he always does. No one loves football more than Dennis, and I will be participating between 3 and 5. It is the SSV on WNST, now heard from 3 until 5 on Thursday. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.